shut the meeting down. And you won't get
Across the country, city council meetings are being packed to capacity with angry residents. These people are showing up over an issue you might not expect. They're here to debate housing policy, which has rapidly risen to marquee status at city halls and state capitals all over the country. And a quick look at housing prices helps explain why. The cost of housing has shot up 46% in the last 4 years, greatly outpacing the rise in wages. And with interest rates having doubled, the prospect of becoming a homeowner is being pushed further out of reach. Part of why the American housing problem feels so hopeless is because its two loudest combatants are having a difficult time finding common ground. On one side, you have people who want to build a lot more housing, meaning large, dense apartment buildings. While on the other side, you have people who only want single-family homes. Homes that eat up a large footprint of city land while only housing a single family, limiting the supply of housing within a city. With these as our only two options, it's no wonder the American housing war is at a stalemate. But what if there was a third option? One that doesn't radically transform neighborhoods, and one that could actually solve the housing crisis. Today, 75% of residential land is zoned for single-family housing. This fact is the legacy of some fateful decisions made over a century ago. In 1916, New York City implemented the nation's first zoning ordinance. These rules regulated building height and shape, but more importantly, they introduced the idea of separating residential, business, and industrial land uses. Then in 1922, then Secretary of Commerce Herbert Hoover appointed a commission to develop a zoning statute that could serve as a model for cities and states to adopt. The commission took the New York model a step further. While it pushed for a similar separation of residents from factories and businesses, it also laid the blueprint for separating denser, more affordable types of residences away from more expensive and more land-intensive single-family homes. And the idea spread like wildfire.
The federal government begins to encourage cities to establish zoning regulations that will prevent the building of more dense housing.
And this is how we got 3/4 of American residential land zoned for single-family homes. In due time, the single-family home with its sprawling interiors and big yards became the centerpiece of the American dream. But single-family zoning also came at a steep price.
We have artificially limited our housing supply. This was done by design. Back in the 1920s, we passed zoning reform. This was done at the behest of the federal government. And government intervention in the housing market have limited the ability of the private sector to build more housing. Anytime prices go up, you would expect the market to come in and build more housing. But because of single-family detached zoning, which limits you to only one housing unit per lot, we have made that impossible to do. Economics 101 teaches us when you have limited supply and ample demand, you're going to end up driving up home prices higher.
And it's this phenomenon, low supply followed by ever-rising prices, that has prompted calls for denser developments like apartment towers. Those calls have in turn invited a backlash from single-family residents, who worry that large apartment buildings will destroy the character of their neighborhood. This graph shows us the types of new home builds over the past 60 years. These red bars are the share of new housing built as single-family homes, and these yellow bars show housing built as larger, dense developments, like apartment buildings. Together, these single-family homes and these larger apartment buildings represent the overwhelming majority of new home builds. But what about this blue sliver here in the middle? This is a widely neglected form of housing, and it's what American enterprise scholar Edward Pinto calls light touch density.
I define light touch density as things that are in form and size similar to single-family houses. From the street, it looks like a single-family house, but when you look sideways, it's duplexes and triplexes and quadruplexes.
This is a light touch density unit. From a distance, it looks like a single-family home, but it's actually 4 units. This one here also looks like a single-family home, but it's actually a duplex. And this one here is actually a triplex. Light touch density seemingly blends into existing neighborhoods, while also significantly expanding the supply of housing, 2, 3, 4 homes at a time.
Like a townhome, a duplex, a triplex. And that's a really simple, small change that doesn't even abolish something like single-family zoning, but nonetheless allows twice as much housing to be built on the land as it exists.
Light touch density seems like a far less threatening reform for supporters of single-family homes. But can it actually bring down prices? To answer that question, we traveled to a city with one of the fastest growing populations in the country.
We've just seen this rapid insurgence of people. So I think at this point we're the 15th largest city in the United States.
One of the fastest growing cities.
One of the fastest growing cities in the nation.
Like many American cities, Charlotte, North Carolina is struggling to absorb its large influx of residents. The median price for a brand new single-family home is $465,000.
Charlotte is not unique in our housing affordability challenges. We have built a ton of apartments and we've built a ton of single-family homes. And we have underbuilt duplexes, triplexes. A lot of the duplexes and quads and townhomes that you see in some of our older neighborhoods have been there for decades, and you probably don't even notice that they're there.
In small pockets of the city, Charlotte already has light touch density. And the facts about those neighborhoods show us what light touch density could do for the real estate market if it were allowed citywide.
We've studied, in particular, one of those neighborhoods. It was on a street called Pecan and a side street called Kensington. Because of the zoning, which allows up to 22 units an acre, we compared it to a street 2 blocks away called The Plaza, which allowed 8 units an acre.
The Plaza is zoned for single-family homes, which bars developments like light touch density housing and tightly constrains the number of allowable homes per acre of land.
And what we found was that the median on Pecan was lower than the lowest priced house on the Plaza.
Pecan and Kensington, I mean, that's a very popular area for people to live in.
Charlotte soon realized that one of the solutions to its problem had been there all along. In an effort to combat the housing shortage, Charlotte enacted an ordinance that would legalize light touch density throughout the city.
First day of the new Unified Development Ordinance in Charlotte.
Regulations for development take effect.
Changes will allow higher density housing in residential neighborhoods.
Light touch density construction is projected to offer thousands of units at a median price of $352,000. That's a 10% drop in the overall median home price, and it's 25% lower than the median new single-family home.
If light touch density were available by right, we estimate that nationally over 10 years, we'd add 6.6 million housing units. That's a huge difference in terms of, again, having your children and grandchildren being able to live in the area that they grew up. They can live in the same neighborhood. They can live near me because light touch density is going to provide the naturally affordable, naturally inclusionary housing, a mix of ages, all in the same neighborhood. We can't expect them to live in our basements.